Hey, what's up guys, it's James Diamond here and welcome back to the next episode here on Sonic Academy of how to make a Psytrance track. In the last episode we were looking at creating the kick using the awesome Nicky Romero kick synthesizer, how to use a side click for the attack and then creating the body with the envelopes here, and then looking at a bit of compression and EQ. So in this episode we're going to be looking at one of the most important, if not the most important parts of a Psytrance track, and that is of course the bass line. Now, I'm going to show you a technique that I do, and I know that many other Psytrance producers do, and it's basically how to create a bass line using a sample rather than using a synthesizer. So here is the sample that we're going to be using. We're in the key of F. So it's a pretty nice sample, kind of sounds like a Moog bass line. So let's drag and drop that in. We'll rename it. Give it a color. And then we'll create a new pattern. So let's get that into the project and let's get the kick in there as well. So the reason that I'm going to be using a sample rather than a synthesizer to create the bass line is that obviously synthesizers are using oscillators. Now oscillators over time they do not play exactly the same wave form every single time they hit. They can change slightly, they can move up and down. They're not going to play exactly the same note every single time. There's going to be very slight differences in the waveform. Now this can cause problems when it comes to EQ and compressing, that if the waveform's not playing exactly the same thing, then where you're starting to EQ and compress, they're going to change over time, so it's not going to be consistent. With Psytrance, obviously the bass line has to be 100% consistent throughout the entire track. So that's the reason why I'm going to be using a sample. So when we listen to the sample, I'll just link it to a channel. You can hear that it's exactly the same note being played each time. So it's very clear sample to start with, very nice, some nice high end and some nice low end. I've been very lucky that I've actually been sent over samples by some Psytrance producers that I use in my Psytrance tracks, and I'll use those for my bass lines, and they've actually been rendered down from a synthesizer itself. So let's go ahead and enter our bass line, and I'm just going to go and add in the 3 kind of 16th notes, and let's have a listen to this. Pretty standard, pretty rubbish to be honest. There's not much groove to it and it doesn't sound too great whatsoever. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the sample is a little bit shorter, because at the moment the sample is actually, it's not stopping before the next note plays, so there's some overlap within the actual note itself. So if I just put this into a visual kind of representation for you, the notes are actually overlapping slightly, so this note is overlapping the next and the next, and that's not what we want. We want them to be stopping as soon as the next one starts. So in order to do that, we've opened up the sample, we're going to go into the insert settings, we're going to be on the volume envelope here, and we're going to pull the attack, the decay, the sustain and the release all the way back, and then I'm going to use the hold here to actually decrease the length of the note. So I'll play the pattern and then I'll pull the hold back so you can see and hear what it sounds like. So you can hear that shortening the note, and I'm just going to pull this to the right position to make sure that the note stops before the next one starts. I think that sounds pretty good. So liking the sound of that. So you're getting a very defined hit every single time. There's no overlap. And we can quite clearly hear that there's 3 notes playing at once. So the next bit is going to be creating the groove. So at the moment, like I was saying, it's very kind of standard. There's nothing much to it. We're going to create the groove. And the way we're going to do that, rather than using a sidechain compressor or a ducker to kind of duck and the first notes to create the groove, we're just going to use the velocity, which is something I like doing. I feel that you get a bit more control over the sound itself. So this is the velocity section down here. You've got, if you right click on this grey section here, you've got various different parameters, and just make sure that you're clicking on the velocity section there. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to click and line them up with this horizontal line here. Let's have a listen to see how that sounds. So that's actually created some groove for us, which is quite cool. So that's a very, very standard kind of bass line, and we're going to be using this one throughout our project. But it's not to say that you can't go ahead and actually create another type of groove yourself. You know, you can mess around and play around with these notes and try and create a different groove just by moving the notes up and down and see what you can come up with. So that's a pretty cool groove, so you may want to use something like that. But we're going to use the standard rolling bass line. There we go. So we've got our groove set up, and the next part is going to be some EQ to get this really sounding nice and fat. First thing I'm going to do is put on a low cut, and it's going to be a sharp low cut, and I want the frequency to be around 30 Hz to cut off any of that low end rumble. Now, the way that I EQ my bass line, obviously I want to make sure that I'm EQing at very specific points. I'm not just going to boost the low end at any old point and see how it sounds. I want it to be very, very specific. And this is something that you do a lot in psytrances, especially with the bass line, is boosting at the right frequency. So I'm just going to tab over to my internet browser, and this is something that I use a lot for finding out the frequencies of specific notes. So basically we're working in the key of F. So this sheet here tells me that the low octave, so F1, is at 43.65 Hz, and the next octave above, F2, is 87.31. So this is a fantastic sheet for finding out if what key you're in and the exact frequency that you need to boost or cut for that key. In order to find this sheet, you just need to type into Google frequencies of musical notes, and it's just this first one that pops up here, and click into it. So as we're working in the key of F, we want 87.31 Hz. So I'm just going to Alt Tab back over. So we want to boost at exactly 87. Unfortunately, you can't go to the points on the parametric EQ2, but something like FabFilter, ProQ, you can actually type in, you know, to the point, 2 decimal points, 2 decimal places of where you want to boost. So I'm going to do a small bell curve, and I'm then going to boost the EQ. So let's just have a listen to see how this sounds. So the good thing about actually boosting this specific frequency, we're in the key of F, we're actually boosting the note F, the frequency F, and obviously there is going to be some kind of spell out to the other frequencies to below and above it, but we are boosting primarily the note F, and this is really going to help bring out the low end of this note itself. So let's go back to the frequency chart, and what we're going to do, we're going to find the octave above, which is 174.61. So 174. And what we're going to do, we're going to do a small dip. 173, that'll have to do, can't seem to get any closer. We are going to do a small dip. So basically every single sound has resonance frequencies, and I do find with bass lines, especially sublines, that an octave above your root note is going to be your resonant frequency. And what we want to do, we want to take out some of this resonant frequency to allow room for the lower octave to breathe through a little bit more. So I've just gone ahead and done another kind of small curve, curved bell. And I'll boost it to start with so you can hear what it sounds like. So you can clearly hear that that octave doesn't sound very nice. It's a lot of resonance. It's kind of got a very kind of strange woolly type sound to it. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull part of this out. And as you can hear, as I was pulling the volume up and down there, that as I'm pulling it down, it's actually leaving more room for our low end to come through a little bit more. You can actually hear the resonant frequency being pulled out. So it sounded pretty good so far. I think we're just going to add some high end to really give it some nice attack. So that's sounding pretty nice already. So I'll just toggle the EQ on and off so we can hear exactly what we've done. So obviously there's quite a big difference there, but it's really helping to bring out the low end of this sample, which is going to be the main driving force of the track. So next, what I'll usually do, I think that it sounds pretty good at the moment. In fact, let's just have a listen to see how it sounds with the kick drum. So it's sounding pretty nice, but I still feel that it lacks a little bit of low end. What I'll usually then do next is add on some extra bass boost. Now, there's various different plugins you could use. For example, the Waves R-Bass is really great. There's another one called, I think it's X-Bass 4000. And basically what these do, they're just EQs that only work in the super low end, so for your sub-frequencies. So between maybe like 30 Hertz to maybe like 150 Hertz. And we are going to add one of these on, but we're going to use an internal FL Studio plugin. This plugin is the Sound Goodizer. Now this is a bit of an odd plugin, but you can get some really fantastic results out of it. It's kind of like an all-in-one mastering plugin, but it's great to use on your individual channels. I wouldn't say I'd use it for mastering. When I say it's like a mastering plugin, it's because it's got a compressor and a limiter and some kind of EQ settings pre-built in, and it's just a one knob kind of controller, and you've got these different settings down here. We're going to use the A setting, and we're just going to pull it up very, very slightly, and we're going to hear exactly what this is doing and how this is affecting the bass. So you can hear that's given it a nice boost on the low end, and it's just given that little bit extra bit of oomph. So liking the sound of that, so I'm just going to think about there, sounds good. Yeah, so when you turn it on and off, you can really hear the difference. So let's turn off the entire effects on the bass line, and I'll turn them back on again so you can hear how they sound. So this is without any effects on. So you can really hear that that's giving a lot of boost on the low end and really helping turning it into a sub bass. So let's go ahead and make sure that our kick and our bass are sitting at the right volume. So we are going to go onto our master, and I'm going to open up the Voxengo Span. Well, this is a frequency analyzer. It's a free plugin that you can get from the Voxengo website. Simply type in Voxengo into Google or your internet browser and go onto the site and find I think it's under frequency analyzers, and it's called the Spanner. So download that. It's available for PC and Mac, and it's absolutely fantastic. The great thing about it is that we can see exactly what's going on in the project. So I'll play the project and we'll have a look at what it's doing on the Voxengo Span. So we can see exactly the frequencies are being played in the mix. I've got this on high res mode. There's also the default mode, which shows you a more smooth curve of the frequencies. I like to have it on the high res mode, particularly for when I'm doing very kind of fine tuning sections like we're doing right now. So I want to make sure that my kick and my bass line are at the right level. Now the great thing about the Span is that I can obviously see on the high res mode, I can see my kick and I can see my bass line. Now I'm going to play both of them together, and I'm going to listen, and I'm also going to watch and make sure that both of the kick and the bass are sitting at the right volumes. So I think that sounds about right, and it also looks about right. As you can see here, this is our kick drum and this is our bass line, and they are pretty much sitting in the same area, and it sounds right, it looks right. I'm going to trust it, and let's go with that. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do for the bass line at the moment. Obviously, so we're looking at using the velocity to control the actual groove of the bass line itself, and making sure that your bass line notes are short enough so they don't overlap with the next hit that's coming in. Some EQ, some very fine EQ, using the musical sheet of frequencies to really boost the exact frequency of your root note of your bass sample itself, and then adding some extra bass line in with the sound goodizer. So there we go. So make sure you join me in the next episode where we'll be looking a little bit further into the kick and the bass and how to meld these together even more. Okay, thanks.